Chatterbots, welcome back to another episode of Chat About That. I'm Bella.
I'm Malik.
And in this episode, we're going to be chatting about RuPaul's Drag Race and what exactly is drag. Before we chat about that, I just want to say Happy Pride Month.
Happy Pride.
Happy Pride. We have had so much fun this Pride already. We've been to a couple of festivals.
Been busy.
And events and been pretty busy. So that's why this episode is coming at the end of June. But we've had a lot of fun with Pride Month so far. And one of the things that we did, we're going to be talking about later in the podcast because it has to do with drag specifically. But we'll get into that a little bit later. But for this episode, we're going to be talking about RuPaul's Drag Race mainly, but also giving a little bit of backstory on what drag is and who RuPaul is, just for those of you who aren't aware. So what exactly is drag for people who don't know what it is?
In a very, very, very tiny nutshell, very generalizing here, drag generally refers to men or people, are assigned male at birth, dressing up as the opposite gender. So men dressing up as women, very super general here.
Yeah.
Again, that's, one size doesn't fit all. Different people do drag differently for a multitude of reasons. And there's different styles of drag. There's different makeup styles, outfits, performance, different reasons why different people do drag. And drag isn't necessarily a gender thing. Some people do it as a specific character or like a fantasy design or, again, the performance aspects and things like that. So, again, one shoe doesn't fit all the feet, literally and figuratively. There's a lot of shoes and a lot of heels.
Yeah, and there's also drag kings, which is traditionally women or female presenting people dressing up as men. But like Malik mentioned, you don't have to be a man or born male or even identify as either gender.
Or both or all the above.
Yeah, you don't have to be one specific gender or sex to be a drag queen or a drag king. But traditionally, yes, it is males dressing up as females. And on RuPaul's Drag Race, which we'll get into in a bit, it is mostly men or trans men. There are some trans women, there's some non-binary folks on there, but it's mostly male presenting people dressing up as women. So that's what RuPaul's Drag Race is. Before we get into Drag Race, which has quickly become one of our favorite shows, we're gonna just talk about who RuPaul is. So RuPaul Charles is the host of RuPaul's Drag Race, obviously, and he became a drag queen in the early 90s and was really quickly became really popular. He worked with a lot of really famous drag queens like Lady Bunny, who is brought up often on RuPaul's Drag Race, and he quickly became known as the supermodel of the world. That's kind of the nickname that he has. So he has been a notable drag queen in the drag community for a very long time. And he was born in Atlanta, but he started doing drag in, I believe it was in New York City. He was a New York queen, and he's just become really, really popular through drag. He also does music, which we'll get into in a little bit. But he has RuPaul's Drag Race, which has been going on since, oh my god, early 2000s, right? It came out in early 2000s-ish. It's been going on for a very long time. I think they're on season 15 right now, or they just finished season 15, I think.
Yeah. In addition to a ton of offshoot seasons and shows.
Yeah, which we'll talk about. But yeah, so the most recent season that just ended was season 15. And so RuPaul's Drag Race is basically a reality competition for drag queens to become the next drag superstar. And like Malik said, there are spin-off shows.
Yeah, some of the spin-off shows include Drag Race All-Stars, which brings back mostly the finalists from previous seasons to compete.
Queens that did really well, or fan favorite kind of queens, or not favorites.
Yeah. And then there's Drag Race Canada, UK, I think several other countries.
Drag versus the World was one of them too. Mm-hmm. So yeah, there's lots of different spin-offs of the show, which are all the same premise. So basically take, I think, maybe 12 or so queens. The number varies, but let's just say 12, just as our number, queens, and there are different competitions that they go through. So some of the challenges include like acting challenges, there's like improv challenges, there's challenges where they have to do a commercial, challenges where they have to star in like a fake sitcom episode, or they have to do a variety show, or like performances. There's all different kinds of things that they're asked to do, and based on their performances they are either winners or they're eliminated. And it's basically just that, it's a reality competition to find a drag queen. So it's kind of like American Idol, but drag queens, and they're not just singing, they're doing lots of variety of things. And the things that they're asked to do are things that drag queens like should be able to do. Oh, there's sewing challenges, which I think we should talk about.
Don't get me started
your
on
favorite
sewing.
Your favorite thing.
Some of the challenges are specifically where, RuPaul says, hey, the challenge is here's a bunch of materials, now make a look that's going to blow my socks off. And I mean, it could range from, pool floaties and noodles to trash to just a shower curtain, any kind of random stuff you could think of. And, some of the queens, they're like, yeah, I'm good with the hot glue gun, and some of them can actually sew. But it's like, as many seasons as there has been, there's usually at least one design challenge that includes you have to construct something and it's easier to sew it. At least it's going to hold together better. And the amount of queens who still cannot sew, and it's actually kind of a running joke. Some of the queens are like, it's been so long and you don't even know your way around a sewing machine, or it's like you've never seen an episode. It's like, oh my gosh.
Yeah, it's like these people are coming on to a competition where they have expectations of certain things.
It's established.
And it's different than like a dancing challenge, where dancing is, not every queen does really dramatic, crazy, so you think you could dance style dancing in their shows. So some queens are better than others, but dancing is kind of a skill depending on the choreography. You can kind of learn it, like sometimes quickly, sometimes you can just at least get the moves down. But sewing is like, that's something that in general, like the queens should know how to do when they're coming onto the show.
Whenever they're selected, at least maybe watch a YouTube video or sit down with someone, like, this is how you thread a needle on the machine.
Or I was saying like,
so some basic tips and tricks. It's like, you're going to be in the show.
Yeah.
This is going to come up.
Or I was saying, or thinking like, at least know how to use a glue gun. Because one of the queens,
experience.
One of our favorite queens, which we'll get into like a list of all our favorite queens, but one of our favorite queens, Ben de la Creme, she won her sewing challenge on that season with just hot glue. Like, she freaking hot glued the whole dress together and she ended up winning. So it's like, yeah, just know how to construct an outfit. Like, it's kind of ridiculous. But that's basically what like RuPaul's Drag Race is. But there have been some amazing queens on the show. And some of our favorite queens didn't even win their seasons or All-Stars, because a lot of like the fan favorites or like the really good, strong queens will come back on All-Stars. So some of them have had like pretty good like redemptions and stuff on All-Stars. But I think the most notable queen that ever came out of Drag Race is Trixie Mattel. And, like, we both knew who she was before we started watching Drag Race, which we started it, like, last summer, I think around this time last year. And I'd always wanted to watch RuPaul's Drag Race because I've always loved drag queens. I've just always found them to be so fascinating and just the art of it to be really cool. And I always said, like, if I was a man, like, I would be a drag queen because I just love... I mean, I can be a drag queen now. It doesn't matter. But... I think, like, if I was born a male, like, I probably would have ended up becoming a drag queen just because I think it's so cool. And, like, I've just always been so fascinated by drag queens, but I've never watched the show, which is, like, weird because I absolutely love drag queens. So my sister started watching it last year and she was like, you have to watch this. So we started watching it and it's like one of our favorite shows now. But yeah, Trixie Mattel, we both knew who she was before. I think most people know who she is. And she didn't make it very far, and then she came back. Sometimes, not always, but sometimes in the seasons they'll have the eliminated queens come back and like one of them will like make it back into the competition. So she made it back into the competition and was on the show for another like 2 episodes and then was eliminated. So she really didn't do very well on her initial season. And if you know like Trixie Mattel, she has a very specific style of like the way she does her makeup. Like, she makes her eyes look like they're huge, and she does like lots of like really harsh lines on her face. Like, her contour is very harsh. And it's like done on purpose to kind of look like a Barbie doll, because Trixie Mattel is like the company that made Barbies. So her whole aesthetic is sort of like pink and 60s sort of style. But if you'll notice, when she's on the original season, her makeup isn't as like polished as it is when she comes back for All Stars, and then she wins All Stars 3. So she's like one of the most popular queens. She also has a YouTube channel, so she was really popular in general, like before Drag Race and even before All Stars. Like she was pretty popular online just through like YouTube. She also has her own makeup line, which I actually have a bunch of her makeup. I'm wearing some of it right now. And she has a motel called the Trixie Motel, which just opened, I think, like last year, the year before, and they did like a whole HBO special about it. And so she does music. She actually like sings and plays guitar. Like her music is actually good. Yeah. A lot of the queens, no offense RuPaul, but a lot of the queens make music, and it's very just like kind of crappy pop music, if you will. Like some of the RuPaul music is actually like good.
Some
like
of it slaps.
Yeah, like unironically, we actually like some of RuPaul's music. But for the most part, it's not very good, and they like make fun of it on the show too. But a lot of queens go into music. And most of it is terrible.
Most of it's just generic dance club, auto-tuned
pop
kind
music.
Of blends together, kind of all sounds the same.
Yeah, and so most of the queen's music is really shitty. But Trixie's music is actually really good. She does have a couple of those pop, like overproduced songs, but for the most part, her music is very like indie folk country kind of style. And she's actually like a really good singer. So she's very well-rounded, which I think is why she's really popular. And then her personality is just really fun. Like a lot of the queens who've won, they have really good personalities, whether they're very big or they're just like kind people. So Trixie Mattel is probably like the most famous person. And then why don't you go into who your favorite drag queen is? Because Trixie is like one of my favorites. But I'll let you talk about your favorite, who you're wearing on your shirt now.
Repping the queen of all queens, Jinx Monsoon. Is gonna set the table with all the girls, and they have multiple times. Jinx just absolutely slayed in, what was it, season 5, and then it was season 7 of All Stars, which was, you know, All Stars, Queen of all queens. It was all previous winners.
Yeah.
So it was, you know, top of the, like, creme de la creme, you know, top of the notch.
Yeah.
All these.
And she won that.
Yeah.
She basically, so season 7 was taking past winners and coming back, and the way that they like structured that season was a little bit different. We're not going to go into like the way that they structured all the seasons and stuff, because it's a little too much nitty gritty, but it was structured a little bit differently. But she won, and she did like, there were some queens that were like really close that I think like could have beat her. But like for the most part, like her track record on All Stars 7 was like impeccable.
In the top.
Yeah. Maybe she did bad on like one challenge or so, but like
I mean bad by already prior winner standards.
But like she was phenomenal. And she literally won twice. So she is like the queen of all queens. And so why do you like her so much? Because ever since we watched that season, and like when we started watching RuPaul, like my sister was telling us like, oh, these queens are good, these queens are terrible, or whatever. And Jinx Monsoon was one of the queens that she was like, I love Jinx. So like we already went into it. And we also, when we watch all the seasons, we like already know who wins, because it's like already out there.
It's been out for
It's been out, and
years.
it's like well, it's a spoiler. It's like we already know a bunch of queens who win. So like we go into every season like knowing who wins and stuff, and maybe not the order of elimination. Like sometimes I look it up if I'm like, oh, I really hate this queen. Like when are they getting off? But we knew going in that she won. But like why do you like her so much? Like why is she your favorite queen?
I mean, top-notch performer, quirky and funny as hell, and just like incredibly creative. Like all of looks, like several of Jinx's looks just live rent-free in my head. Probably my favorite look was actually on the season 5 that they initially won, and it was the like Dia de los Muertos, kind of towards the end. Just the makeup and the artistry, well, like costuming isn't the right word, but like creating a whole other character but still being familiar and being recognizable as Jinx. Like there's such a fine line, and he just like tight-roped it so perfectly, and it was so cool. And again, I mean, the acting challenges, you know, hilarious, and just obviously like in their element, you know, every time, and just quirky, didn't care how absurd they came across, which just added to it. You know, it's like just the confidence, the quirkiness, embracing it all, just top-notch artistry.
Well, it looks like Malik has a costume change, just like a drag queen. And who's on your shirt now?
Very close second favorite queen is Bianca Del Rio, who probably, I mean, next to Jinx, probably has the best track record of any queen. Bianca actually was never even in the bottom or even close to the bottom in her season, which actually has yet to happen again.
Yeah, she literally was either safe or in the top the entire competition. And even though we went into the season, like, obviously we watched this, like, years after it came out, even just watching it, I was like, there's no way she's not gonna win. Like, it was like, oh, and it was a sidebar. Okay, this is the stupidest thing ever. And I knew this before watching the show because I'd heard it, like, on YouTube or something. When they do the finale, so the finales of RuPaul's Drag Race, and I think this style of finale started with, like, season 4, but when they do the finale, they film it in front of a live audience. It's not live, but it's filmed in front of a live audience. And they do a whole production. Like, they have all the queens from the seasons come back, and they do, like, a little fashion show thing, and then they do a performance, and they have all, like, normally it's 3 or 4 queens that make it to the top, and they'll, like, interview them and talk about, like, their journey and whatever. When they go to announce the queen, they literally film every single person who is in the top winning. So if they have 4 queens that are potentially winners, they will film each queen individually winning. And then after everybody goes home and they're editing the show, RuPaul is like, yeah, Bianca won. Or, yeah, Jinx won. Because they don't want anybody leaking the information, which I get. Like, I totally get. We don't want people leaking the shit. But you're literally, like, making these poor people wait months to know if they won the freaking show. It's so weird. Even when I heard that before I watched the show, I was like, that is just so weird. So every time we watch the finale, we're like, oh, JK, like, that person actually won. Like, and then there's footage of this. Like, I don't know if it came from, like, behind the scenes footage or if people, like, took videos at the show. Like, I don't know exactly where.
Because how's the audience? Like, they got to sit through all that too. It's like,
yeah. And so there's footage of, like, other queens who were in the top winning, quote, winning. And it's just really interesting, or, like, their crowning of them as the queen. Where they do actually get a real crown and scepter. Courtesy of Fierce Drag Jewels, because they have lots of random sponsors. Lot of random sponsors. They had the Interior Illusions Lounge, where when we were in Las Vegas, we literally saw a piece of furniture that was by Interior Illusion.
It was a little statue, and I was like, oh my god.
And we were like, wow, it's real. And in Vegas, too, there's actually a RuPaul's Drag Race show in Vegas that just started, I think, a couple of years ago. It was like 2001 or something. Or, oh my god, 2021, not 2001. Yeah, I think it was like 2021 that the show, or 22, the show started in Vegas. It's a permanent show, so they rotate different queens in and out. We didn't go to it when we were in Vegas. We had lots of other things we were doing, but when we go next time, we'll probably hit it up. But yeah, those 2 are like our 3 are like our favorite queens. But we want to talk about a couple of the other queens, but we're gonna talk about them in a relation to our favorite challenge that is on the show, which is everybody's favorite challenge, and it's called the Snatch Game, and it is basically a parody of Match Game. So if you have ever watched, like, old like game shows back in the day, there was a show called Match Game, and most of the time celebrities were, like, on this show as contestants. And so basically Match Game and Snatch Game is done in the same style. Match Game is basically you have 2 people who are asked different questions, and it'll be like, and all of these are sort of like on Drag Race. They're all kind of like sexual related questions because it's Drag Race. But it'll be asked like...
It's not PG.
No. It'll be like, when Abraham Lincoln goes to a play, who does he bring with him, or some stupid stuff where you fill in the answers. And then the contestants, so there's like 2 contestants, will say he brings popcorn. And then all the celebrities will have to also be answering the question, and whoever says the same thing, that contestant gets a point. So if, like, back in the day when they were like old Hollywood stars, if it was like Judy Garland and she said popcorn, then that person would have gotten the point. So basically, for Snatch Game, they have 2 different contestants who are normally like celebrities, or they'll be like the judges on the show, because they do have people who come in and judge. So like Lady Gaga was a judge one time, like Lizzo, like they'll have all those kinds of people. So normally the judges of Snatch Game are the people who end up being the judges on the show, that episode. Or they'll just be like past queens or guests or whatever. And then each queen who's a contestant on RuPaul's Drag Race, so the competing queens, will have to dress up like a celebrity and impersonate them. And it is literally one of the greatest and most cringiest things that I have ever seen. Like, I don't think... Like, I have seen TV shows and movies that are cringy as hell. Like, you love The Office, but I think The Office is, like, the most cringy show ever. But I have never cringed harder watching Snatch Game. And the one, I do not remember what it was.
Is it season 4?
No, it was not season 4. There was
Season 4 was unhinged.
Season 4 was, like, the worst Snatch Game. But there was one Snatch Game, and again, I don't remember because I have blocked it from my memory, that was so painful that I literally had to mute the TV because I couldn't do it. I literally was like, Malik, I can't, and I had to mute it, and I had to walk out of the room because it was so cringy. But when it's good, it's so good.
It's when shit gets real.
Yeah.
It really brings out, like, some of the really strong queens. Yeah. And, like oh my those God. Who probably won't be finalists. Like, it's tough because, I mean, it's like, it's... Yeah.
And most of the time, the queens that win Snatch Game end up getting pretty far in the competition. But there have been some seasons where, like Evie Oddly, for example. Yeah, okay, so Evie Oddly is one of our other favorite queens. I cannot remember what disability she has, but she has some sort of, is it like skin or muscle disorder or something?
Yeah, like a skeletal muscular.
Yeah, so she has some sort of disability, so she's said she's not gonna be able to continue doing drag for like very much longer, so we're hoping we'll get to like see her perform before she's not able to do a lot of stuff, but she's able to do a lot of contortion kind of things, and she won her season, but she almost got eliminated on her Snatch Game because she was so bad. Her Snatch Game on her season, she did come back for like the all-star one where Jinx won, but her Snatch, she was Whoopi Goldberg, and she was so bad. And so her and this other queen, Brooklyn Heights, who also made it... Was it Brooklyn? Yeah, it was Brooklyn. Yep. Also made it to the final. They were both in the bottom. And so... we forgot to mention that when the 2 bottom queens are up for elimination, they have to lip-sync battle for their life, as they're called, to stay in the competition. And you're thinking lip-sync battle? No. These lip-sync battles get crazy. Like, these queens are, like, flipping around, doing death drops. They're, like... doing crazy shit with their hands, and like it's nuts. And so you're either a really good lip sync queen or you're terrible. Like there's like pretty much no in between. And so when Evie and Brooklyn were in the bottom, because both of their Snatch Games were awful, they had to both lip sync, and the lip sync battle was so good. I've literally rewatched this on YouTube like multiple times. Like the one day I was like, I just want to rewatch that. Like I'm feeling like I'm just like it's living in my head. Like I just want to watch it again. It was so good that RuPaul was gagged to the point where she was just like, y'all can both stay, because that was amazing.
Yeah, they did.
Like it was so good, and that's happened a couple of times. It's where rare. She lets them both stay. It's happened maybe like 3 or 4 times. Maybe, yeah. But yeah, anyway, the lip sync battles at the end are crazy. But that was one example of like a queen who won the show that did terrible on her Snatch Game. But then you get people like Katya, who's also one of my favorite queens, who was on the same season as Trixie Mattel, and they're like best friends. They do like shows together and stuff. Katya did Bjork. I can't remember if that was on her first season or her All Stars, but she did Bjork, and she was so funny. She was like eating the cards, like she was like literally unhinged. And then one of my absolute favorite Snatch Games that was ever done was Aquaria doing Melania Trump. Oh, And so Aquaria won season, whatever season. And she was like, I don't know what to do for Snatch Game because I can't really articulate myself very well. Like, she's more of like a look and dancing kind of queen. She's not really like dancing.
Like improv.
But yeah, she wasn't at the time as good at improv and comedy stuff. She's gotten better, and as through the competition, she got better. But at the time in the competition, she wasn't really good at that kind of stuff. She was really more good at like design and dancing and stuff. And so she's like, I don't really know how to articulate myself very well, so I need to pick somebody who can't really speak well. So she picked Melania Trump. And her impersonation of her was so good. It was so funny. Yeah. And they don't just impersonate the people, they dress up like them.
Yep.
So it's just, they have to fully commit to it. And it's just so funny. And then Ben de la Creme was freaking Maggie Smith. Yeah. And it was like the funniest shit ever. And she won. Mm-hmm. And then Jinx was
Little Edie.
Little Edie from... If you've ever seen the documentary Grey Gardens, or the movie, it was a movie. No, it was a documentary first? I think it was a documentary and then they made it into a movie. Unhinged as hell. Just look up Grey Gardens. It's just like the most unhinged shit of all time. And it was like a real thing that happened. But she was one of those people. And like, if you've seen the documentary or seen the movie, it was like literally spot on. And she won. And then Bianca
did Judge Judy.
Yes, Bianca was Judge Judy. And did she win? I think she won.
I think so.
She was so funny too. So like, there's just some queens who do like unhinged shit. But then there are some queens who are so bad.
They just crash and burn. It's like a car accident. It's like you can't look away. It's like, what are you doing?
Like every time somebody does Beyonce, they're terrible. And this is what we're getting at when we say like you need to be not afraid of being absurd, because in Snatch Game you have to be ridiculous.
Have to make RuPaul laugh.
You have to make him laugh. If you don't make him laugh, like you're not doing a good job. So a lot of these people like pick characters. They pick like celebrities or characters. Some of them have been, fictional people. You have to not be afraid of being ridiculous and being funny. So some of the, like, oh my god, anyone who did Beyonce has always been bad. Fifi O'Hara did Lady Gaga, and that one was terrible. Yeah. And again, what these queens that we're saying did a bad job, we're not necessarily saying these queens are bad, it's just their portrayal in Snatch Game was terrible, and it's a known thing. Yeah. So Fifi was really bad. Like, Evie is one of my favorite queens ever, and her original Snatch Game was terrible. I think when she came back on Drag, or All Stars, like, she wasn't as bad. Like, it was pretty decent.
Yeah, it was, they did the Boogeyman.
Yeah, she did the Boogeyman.
An original take on a well-known thing. And it was really clever.
It was really clever and funny. Yeah. And then, one of the other greatest ones was also on All Stars, was Trinity the Tuck. So Trinity the Tuck was on regular Drag Race, and then she won All Stars in a co-win with Monet Exchange. But Trinity the Tuck is like she's one of our favorites as well.
Fantastic.
But she on All Stars, when she came back, the second All-Stars, she did Satan. And so when she was in the workroom is like their work room, but it's WERK, workroom. So when she was like backstage, like preparing, and RuPaul was like, who are you gonna do? She was like, oh, I'm gonna do Satan. And he's like, cool. And we're thinking like, oh my god, she could go any direction with this, because you could do super scary, you could do really overly sexual, but she decided to make Satan an overly flamboyant gay man, which was hilarious.
Like, cartoony and over the top.
Like, hey guys!
Little gloves.
Yeah, like talking like that, like so funny, but like those are the kinds of things where you can really play with it. Or when people do like the one person, I think 2 people have done Harriet Tubman, and the first person who did Harriet Tubman was terrible. Or was it Harriet Tubman, or was it, it wasn't Harriet Tubman, it was, maybe it was Harriet Tubman. I can't remember. But, the second person who did Harriet, or the other person that, oh no, it was, oh my god, this is gonna bother me if I can't figure out who it was. It was Maya Angelou? But one was Harriet Tubman, one was Maya Angelou. Okay. The one queen did Maya Angelou, And the first time she did it was terrible. And then the second queen who did Maya Angelou was really funny. And then another queen did Harriet Tubman. And it was so funny because the queen, I think was it Monet Exchange? I can't remember. I can't remember exactly which queen it was, but whatever queen did Harriet Tubman, made it like really funny. Like Harriet was like kind of like an asshole and was like kind of like hood in a way. Like I'm not trying to be offensive, but like they made it like they made her be kind of out of character for like how she probably was, but that's why it was funny.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah, the Snatch Game can really go one of either ways, and you're either watching it and you're like, this is so funny, or you're like, I literally just want to crawl in a hole and die right now. But it's so, so funny.
So here in a couple of weeks, we're actually going to go see my favorite queen. We're going to see Jinx Monsoon doing the, is it Everything at Stake tour? And I haven't looked up anything about it, so
I haven't either.
No freaking idea what to expect.
I've seen some stuff of her shows online, and I think it's probably a mix of like a comedy routine mixed with probably performances. But yeah, we're really excited about that. And then we also got tickets to a drag Christmas show, which I literally just saw as an Instagram ad, and I was like, what is this? It's a bunch of queens that we love. It's a mix of queens who have been winners or like high up like in the competition. And there's going to be a lot of them. It's hosted by Miss Cracker, who we love, and Trinity the Tuck is going to be there.
You were reading the list and you were like reading names. I'm like, oh my god.
Yeah, Trinity the Tuck's going to be there.
Alyssa Edwards.
Alyssa Edwards, who is literally one of the greatest dancers ever. Like, her dancing is amazing. Oh, yeah. So there's a lot of queens going to that we're like really, really excited about. And so that's in November. So that'll be like our early Christmas present. And then we also, at the beginning of Pride Month, went to DC and we saw Sasha Velour, and she performed at this really small venue up there. It was actually a synagogue, and it was put on by the Washington Performing Arts, who do a lot of really cool shows throughout Washington DC. And this was actually a book tour that she was doing, and so we bought her book when we got there, and then it came autographed, but if you wanted to get it personalized and you wanted to meet her, you could wait till after the show. So we waited for maybe like 30-40 minutes to meet her. It wasn't very long. And so we got it personalized, the book personalized, and we got to talk to her for like a couple seconds, and it was really, really wonderful. So she was promoting her book, and the show I'm not going to talk too much in detail about like everything in the show, but basically people who were like setting up the show were like bringing out like the table with water cups on it and her book to put on there and some chairs and stuff. And so we're all like waiting for the performance to start, and they were showing a couple like videos that she had made to kind of promote the book, and all of a sudden the person comes back out and removes this cloth off of the chair, and she is the chair. And her little face is like peeking out through a hole, and she starts singing, and like the chair starts moving, and she's like doing a freaking performance as a chair, and I'm just like,
it was like the most unhinged shit that like I would never come up with myself. It's like that's the kind of shit I want to go see at a drag show. It's like this wacky, creative, fun,
and then
performance.
She starts moving around in the chair.
It's like shimmying back and forth.
Yeah, she's like shimmying back and forth, and then she stands up, and the cushion's like on her body, and the cushions are on her hands and her feet, and she's dancing, and then she goes back into the chair, and then she comes back out, and she takes the pieces off, and she's wearing this dress, and then she takes the tassels off the chair and puts them on her ears as earrings, and then she takes the thing off the back of the chair, and she puts it on, and it's her hat, and I'm just like, this is amazing. Like, who the hell comes up with this shit?
Exactly.
And the reason why she is such a good queen is because her performances and the way that her drag is, it's quirky, it's avant-garde, and it's funny, but it's also like artsy. Like, this was like an art performance. And then some of the other performances she did throughout the show, the one was like literally a performance art piece. Like, she was standing and wearing this beautiful headpiece and this dress, and she was sort of supposed to be like a recreation of this like statue that had been like found. It's like in ruins, so like you can't see the whole statue, but like she became the statue, and the song that she was lip syncing to was a very like emotional song. But then she also does like funny things like the chair and things like that. And so that's why I really like her, because she is not just a really good queen, but she's very artsy and creative. And it was like watching a performance art. Like, I think people who don't really even care about drag, I think they would have enjoyed that show. Like, I think if my mom had went to that, she would have been like, this is amazing. Like, and I think she would have even enjoyed it. Not that she dislikes drag, it's just not really like her cup of tea. And then, so she also like went back and forth between performing and also reading excerpts from her book. So we learned a little bit about like her backstory and how she, got into drag and things like that. And then she also brought up, I guess, every performance, like she would bring like a local queen or a queen that was born in the area. And so the queen she brought was Junior Mint. And Junior Mint, it was actually from Washington, D.C. originally. And she did this beautiful performance. And then Sasha said, I'm up here performing on this stage and I want to give some of my space to another artist for them to perform, which I thought was like really
so cool.
Yeah, because like this is her show, her book tour, but she's giving up some of that time to another queen to have some time to shine. And then they talked for a little bit and they did a performance together as well. Yeah. But it was a really wonderful show, just phenomenal. And it was a pretty small venue, so we were like pretty close to the stage.
Yeah.
And then we got to meet her afterwards, and she was very nice. Kind. And even though we just got to talk to her for a couple seconds, you know how like autographing goes, but she was very cool, and she complimented your earrings.
Yeah.
Mal wears these cool like spike earrings, and she liked them. But yeah, we had such a wonderful time. So yeah, we're so excited for the drink show and for the Christmas show. Yeah, there's lots of tours going on for drag queens, not just queens that are on RuPaul's Drag Race, but queens in general. There's always local drag shows. For Pride, we went to a local brewery because they were doing a little drag show, and it was just cool. A couple queens. Tip your local queens. It was nothing fancy, but it was like really cool. There were just a couple of them. They came out and did a couple songs and stuff. Yeah. And it was really awesome. And getting into tipping their local queens, we just want to mention, and I think we would be remiss if we didn't mention the drag bans that are going on right now.
Yeah, just, oh my gosh, it's gonna be a whole other can of worms, but in a nutshell, we all kind of have an idea where politics have been leading these days, and several states have passed what they call drag bans, which is they basically ban people, try to ban, I should say, how are they really enforcing this? Of wearing quote-unquote gender non-conforming clothing. So again, it's such a broad umbrella term. So they, the colloquial term is drag ban, but really what they're targeting is transgender and gender non-conforming people. Yeah. But again, it's it's such a broad term. They could go over women wearing pants, cosplayers. Yeah, some conventions have actually the ones I've seen so far have reversed the rules, but they initially actually banned crossplay, people cosplaying as, a character that's so the opposite of their gender.
You couldn't cosplay as Princess Leia because that's a women's outfit, and it is really at the root targeting gender non-conforming people or trans people or non-binary people or whatever, and it's disguised as no drag, but where does that line end? There are musicals and plays where men dress up as women and I
mean, there's some religious attire that men, could be counted as a skirt.
Yeah, or a dress or something. So it's just such a shame that a lot of these states are passing things like this, and there are so many politicians who are in favor of things like this. And luckily, a lot of these bills that have passed have been reversed or blocked by either state judges or federal judges or whatever. So a lot of these have already gone away, but there were some places where Pride was canceled. Like some local, counties or whatever, their Pride had to be canceled because people were afraid of backlash. And even at the Pride that we went to, there were rumors, I guess you saw online, that people might target it, but we were lucky enough that nothing happened at any of the Prides that we went to. I think DC is pretty liberal. There's always non-liberals or people who are not friendly to community. You don't have to be a liberal to be friendly with the community. But there are always people who are not friendly to the community out there. Like I've been to many DC Prides, and there's always people out there, preaching the Bible or doing whatever. But there luckily was no attacks or anything that we went to.
We saw.
Yeah. So we wanted to mention that, and just if you are not aware of the drag bans, just do a little bit of research on it, look up your local, legislation, and if you're able to, go to some drag shows for your local queens. And also a lot of these bans are put in place also to, quote, not let the drag queens target children, which again, that's a quote. So a lot of these places are, drag queens can't perform in front of minors because they're grooming children and things like that. So when we went to the local drag show, there was a family with a young girl there, and the queens made a point to go up to them during the performance and say, thank you so much for bringing your kids here. There are even some people who brought, like, their babies, which obviously babies can't.
Babies not gonna know.
Babies don't know that they're at a drag show. But, like, the little girl, like, she was just happy to be there and to see the queens. And, like, they made a point to go over and talk to her and express, how grateful they were that people were exposing their children to drag, because yes, there is some drag that is not appropriate for minors. There are some queens.
There's nothing wrong with
There's
that.
nothing wrong with that. There are some queens who have explicit content in their shows, just like you would go to a musical or a play or a concert. I've been to some concerts where the performers are swearing on stage or singing songs, sexual songs, or whatever. It's like,
just watch any TV show or
Yeah,
movie.
there's-
So there are some scenes that are like, whoo.
yeah,
okay.
there's always stuff in performances that might not be suitable for everyone. That's why there's rating systems. So it's okay for a drag queen to say, hey, my show is sexually explicit, or I'm going to
18
swear
plus.
a lot and it's 18 plus.
Yeah.
That is okay, but to make bills that are banning all drag for minors because all of it is inappropriate is not the case. Like the Sasha show, a 5-year-old could have went to that show and been fine.
The vast majority of drag shows you'll find out there, whether it's a show by, a winning performer like Sasha, or the local brewery where there was 3 queens prancing around to,
Katy Perry.
Yeah, catchy songs on a really terrible speaker.
Oh, the speaker was terrible at the show we went. Not the Sasha show, at the local show we went to. The speaker was bad, but...
Yeah, but the vast majority of them are perfectly fine. And just go out and check them out. We could preach all day, or you could, read all the things online. But it's like you won't actually know what it's like until you actually get off the couch and go check one out.
Yeah, so I would highly recommend checking out local drag shows, or even just watching performances online, or following queens, watching their content, anything like that does help. So that's it for this episode. I hope you enjoyed learning about RuPaul's Drag Race and drag queens, and I hope this inspired you to go watch the show and to also check out some of the queens that we mentioned and to do some research on the local drag bands. As always, stay safe, stay classy, and we'll chat again with you soon. Goodbye!
See ya.